All right, and welcome to Sound Mind, Sound Body. This is my workshop. I'm Izzy Naud. I'm a health and well-being coach for the music industry. I used to work in the electronic music scene during 10 years. I did everything, marketing, communication, artist promotion, events organization, until I started an artist management agency back in 2011. And I got a burnout because at that time I didn't have any mentor, I didn't have any business partners, I had no clue what I was doing. I had to figure out everything, and right from the beginning, I wanted to start with 4 artists, which is like not even sustainable. And I had a crazy life, traveling and going out a lot. And in the end, I finished. I had to go to the mental health hospital, and there at that time, burnout wasn't even a term. It didn't exist, and they diagnosed me with a mental health disorder. I got medicated, and my life was like, whoa, what's halted? And what saved me was that I was practicing Kung Fu and Tai Chi, and it's really the Tai Chi that saved me. And I also went to see an acupuncturist, and I received hypnosis therapy. And little by little, I regained my health, my mental health, physical health, emotional health. And then I started teaching Tai Chi. I started studying traditional Chinese medicine through shiatsu massage and Qigong, which is energy work. And back in 2021, I finished a certification as a fitness coach and decided to help folks in the music industry to improve their health and prevent burnout. So here I am today, and that's how I met Melissa. And I'm so happy to have you on, Melissa. So I'm going to make a short intro to what you do. Um, so Melissa Garcia is a founding partner at Collective Entertainment, specializing in talent management and strategic consulting in marketing and branding. With a background spanning music, sports, and skydiving, Melissa has orchestrated successful marketing campaigns and career development for her clients since 2011. Committed to mental health advocacy, Melissa is a certified yoga instructor and host of Yoga on the Move, a podcast for finding stillness in a world of movement. Melissa is also a licensed skydiver and holds a master's degree in music business from NYU. Through her work, Melissa inspires others to find harmony in music and wellness and adventure. Welcome, Melissa. we,
Thank you,
we met
Izzy.
we met last year at the Future Music Forum conference in Barcelona, and that was a great experience. We started with the holistic day, and I gave a qigong workshop. Do you want to share about your experience?
Sure. Yeah. So I heard about Qigong, had never done it before. Izzy was there and I love your energy so much. I mentioned this on our podcast interview. Your energy is just it's so calm and it's so inviting. And I did the Qigong session with you and it was just like a group of a lot of people in this one room. And I was in a dress. I was in like ballerina kind of shoes, but we were all doing qigong together and it was so much fun, and some of us were barefoot, some of us weren't. And I was like, this is so cool because I felt like there was a lot of ways it translated or had similarities with yoga. So then I invited Izzy to be on my podcast because I loved what she had to say, and her history with burnout. I think it's so prevalent within our industry, and it's a something we can all really relate to. And so we've just connected through that, and it's been really incredible.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a great session. I think everyone had a good time. Like 2 weeks ago, I was at Primavera Pro, and in one event, I met someone who said, "Oh, I remember you. You were at Future Music Forum. You gave the Qigong workshop, and I was there, and I had so much fun." I was like, "Wow, that's interesting. The impact that
Yeah.
people that I had on that
Yeah.
workshop."
Yeah, that's
So,
incredible.
yes.
Hi,
So maybe
Mike.
welcome, Mike. So I have a few questions for you. Like I have a whole page. The first question is, can you tell us a bit about your background? How did you get involved in the music industry?
Sure. So I'm a musician at heart. I started playing piano when I was 6, flute when I was 8. I was extensively in band and marching band, orchestra throughout my adolescence, through high school, and even into college. I minored in music performance on the flute, piano, and the carillon. So music is something that I hold really near and dear to my heart. And despite performing most of my childhood and adolescence, I realized I did not want to be on stage. And so I figured, okay, why not tie business with music and work in the music industry so I can at least be in the industry that I love so much. And, I also understand from an artist slash musician perspective. So that's really how I got started. I got into NYU's music business grad program, graduated from there. I held different internships, and through one of my internships, I actually met my now business partner, Emily White. So I started interning with her, and from there grew into artist management. I've done things from day-to-day management to tour managing to consulting with various entities within and outside of the music industry, and now co-founding partner of Collective Entertainment. We are 100% women owned and operated organization, and I'm really proud of the work that we do. So yeah, so that's how I got started. And obviously, yoga's been a big part of that, big part of my life, much bigger part than me actually being in the music industry. Yeah.
Yes, so talking about yoga, what is your experience with embodied practices? What does yoga bring to your life?
Yeah. So I would say truthfully, there's a multitude of ways that yoga comes into my life. As an avid yoga practitioner, it makes me feel really great. I love the mind body connection, but the biggest thing that I've taken away from it, and this is really what kind of embodied my yoga teacher training, was the philosophy aspect of it. I think up until I became a yoga teacher, I only really understood some of the asanas and the postures, and going to yoga studios and looking in the mirror and seeing yourself do X, Y, and Z postures. Um, but then, I decided to get my yoga teacher training in 2017, and that actually really opened my eyes in terms of yoga philosophy and how enriching yoga really is. And to me, the vast majority of yoga isn't necessarily defined by the postures and the physical asana practice. It's actually more defined by the philosophical aspect of it. So yeah, my experience with that is, I've been practicing yoga for many, many years now. And I've taught for some years now as well. And I'm such a firm believer in trying to integrate what you connect with and resonate with within the yoga philosophy, and bringing it off the mat and outside of the studio, and how can you implement it in your day-to-day life. With the music industry being so near and dear to my heart, I often think about that too, of how I can take some of these pretty basic yoga philosophies and implement it in my day-to-day life, especially with how I interact in the music industry, because I'm such a firm believer in, we can make the world a better place if we all practice mindfulness, if we stick to some of our yoga principles, if we find stillness in a world of movement, which is the motto of my podcast. So that's, a big reason why I wanted to have this conversation, to see if there are other people that resonate with that as well. And maybe we could have an interesting discussion of how we can implement yoga philosophy into our day-to-day lives and within the industry.
Yes, definitely. Like if you want to open your mic and add something, any person here, Charlotte, Mila, Mike, Emma, you're welcome to share also your experiences.
Yeah. I'm actually curious. Oh, someone rose up their hand. I don't know if anyone rose up their hand. Did someone raise up their hand? So I'm actually curious. So I talked to Charlotte and Mila beforehand. Emma and Mike, I would love if you don't mind sharing, you can either type it or unmute your mic, what your level of experience is with yoga and yoga philosophy.
Um, I feel like I do yoga quite often, not like every week, because also now workout classes are expensive. Not that, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't afford all of these. But I love, um, I definitely, I'm trying to implement more like breath work into my daily life because I don't
Yes.
breathe enough. And then I'm
Yes.
anxious, and it's a whole thing, and I don't like being anxious.
Yeah.
So definitely trying to implement that kind of thing and trying to figure out how to as well. Because yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I loved your answer, Emma. Thank you so much for sharing. And then Mike said my only experience with yoga is with you, Melissa. But to be honest, only have done meditation and haven't done that in a while. At some point, I would actually love to do a meditation with all of you. But maybe we'll save that for the end. But yeah, I back to what Emma had mentioned about breath work, pranayama, which is the fourth limb of yoga, which there's 8 limbs of yoga. And so I always try to explain to students there's 8 limbs of yoga. And one of those limbs is asana, which is what we do on the mat. And there's 7 other parts of yoga that sometimes we leave unexplored. Pranayama is certainly one of them. And in my opinion, I mean, I think all of them are so important, but pranayama is one of those limbs of yoga that is actually a lot more accessible than we realize. And so when we incorporate all 8 of the limbs, which include the asana, the pranayama, which is the breath work, and then the other limbs, which is the yamas and the niyamas, we have this more holistic, more grounded practice within yoga. But what I love about the idea of pranayama slash breath work is that if you're a singer, that's really important. If you're a musician, that's really important. If you're public speaking, that's really important. So we really need it within this industry. Is anyone a singer or a musician or anything like that? Yeah, Emma's a musician. What instrument do you play or do you sing?
I sing,
You sing? Yeah. So breath work is very, very important.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other singers?
I sing and I play the guitar and a little bit of piano as well.
Yes. So I've played piano, I've played flute, and I've sung in ensembles before. And breath work is so important in all of the instruments. I remember playing the piano and holding my breath, right? Like there's something about like playing like it's hard and like all of a sudden you're holding your breath because you're on stage and you're in front of a bunch of people, or when you're singing and you're singing a line and it's like, oh, I didn't take enough of a breath. So I really do understand that and remember my lessons in terms of the diaphragmatic breathing and whatnot. And so what we can actually do towards the end of this workshop is I would love to do some diaphragmatic breathing exercises. Maybe that's a way that we could really think about not just yoga in terms of our breathing technique, but then how it can also benefit us when we are singing loudly and obnoxiously in our cars, which is where I like to sing so no one can hear me because it's not that good. Yeah, so I love that. I love being able to talk about breath work, especially for people who are singers like yourself, Emma. Cool. Yeah. Izzy, I don't know if you had any other questions.
Yes, I have a question regarding prana, energy, because I work with energy, which in Chinese medicine or Chinese martial arts is called qi. It's spelled QI, or sometimes
Yeah.
it's also transcribed CHI. So please share about prana. How do you work with prana in yoga?
Yeah, so pranayama, which is breath work, is essentially taking that energy and filtering it throughout the body and just using it in a way to connect with your mind and your body, and also help regulate your nervous system. So when we think about that energy prana, energy can be really, really high, or it can be really, really low. And so it's finding where you want that to be. And through a yoga practice and through Qigong as well, we're able to find a way to channel that energy. So for example, if you're like myself or like Emma, who have anxiety, right? That's energy that's really, really up here. And so I actually really like to tie it into some anatomy. Obviously, this is not an anatomy workshop, but when it comes to anatomy, I think it's really important to understand our nervous systems. We have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic nervous system that we have zero control of. And you can kind of like wave or drop in the chat, but like, does anyone really know anything about the sympathetic nervous system versus the parasympathetic nervous system? Of course, Izzy knows. Okay, so I'm going to break it down to layman's terms. So we have the fight or flight part of our nervous system, which everyone's very aware of. Now we kind of say fight, flight, or even freeze as part of our sympathetic nervous system. So when that gets activated within our bodies, our pupils get dilated, our arteries and veins get dilated, our body is starting to pump more blood throughout our body so we can create more oxygen so that we are ready to fight or flight. So we have adrenaline pumping through our system. So the hormone adrenaline and cortisol gets spiked up. That does translate a lot to having anxiety. When we have anxiety these days, you know, we're not actually trying to run away from, you know, a woolly mammoth that might be trying to murder us. Our anxiety now can get triggered in very simple things from day-to-day life, through stresses, through financial obligations and whatnot. And so we still have that mentality within our nervous system, which is really, really fascinating to think about. On the other side of the spectrum, we have our parasympathetic nervous system. And this is our rest and digest part of our nervous system. So when I get anxiety, when I get nervous, I can't eat. It makes me feel sick because my sympathetic nervous system has been activated. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system allows us to sleep. It allows us to digest. It conserves our energy. So then that way, when we are ready to expel the energy, it's there. But that's why it's so important with the parasympathetic nervous system that we're able to find a way to activate it. And we do that through energy work, pranayama, thinking about how we can cultivate that energy and filtering it through the body through something as simple as breath work. So the controlling of the breath, there's different kinds of methodologies, there's different kinds of breathing practices that you can do, allows you to start tapping into that parasympathetic nervous system and tells your sympathetic nervous system to calm down so I can like rest and digest. And so I like presenting that so we have an understanding that there are elements to our nervous system that we don't actually have physical somatic control over. There are things that happen that get triggered within us that release very specific hormones that make us, you know, react and respond to our environments in a very specific way. The upside to it is things like yoga, like breath work, like Qigong, we are able to tap into that parasympathetic nervous system to create calmness, to create stillness. And that's why meditation is so important. That's why breathing is so important. That's why sleep is so, so, so vital to our livelihoods. So of course, that's not so much the yoga philosophy, that's more of the anatomical aspect of it. But I think it really ties in with an understanding of how we can bring that into the philosophy when we have the scientific understanding and breakdown of how the body works. So then when we incorporate it into our yoga practice, we can now think of very specific asanas that are going to help with the parasympathetic nervous system. Whereas there might be something like core yoga, which will bring up the sympathetic nervous system because it's fiery. It literally warms the core. That's the tapas or the austerity within us, which ties in with some of the yoga philosophy. There's that. And then we have something like Shavasana, which is like, okay, that's what the parasympathetic nervous system really, really loves. Or something like yin yoga or restorative yoga. Those things can help elicit that reaction or that activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we start tying it into the physical practice, that's where we get into just the connection of it all. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I have a questions regarding like the music industry. What, throughout your experience in the music industry, what are the recurring health and well-being challenges in artists and industry professionals' lives?
Oh my gosh.
That you've observed?
Okay, so I can definitely speak from personal experience. I mean, burnout, obviously, because that's what you experience, Izzy. I've also experienced burnout. Stress is certainly a thing, but I want to go a little bit deeper into the mental health part of it, but vulnerability, insecurity, imposter syndrome, negative self-talk, doubt. I mean, I think those are the commonalities of how some of the mindsets that I see affect the physical body, right? So when we have negative self-talk, when we have imposter syndrome, that ends up translating into something physical within in the body, like stress or anxiety or depression. So I do see these common elements of stress and anxiety, depression, substance abuse. But I think from the core of it, like if we really think about it from the core root of it, it stems from, your personal ego, the way you view the world and you view your own perspective, the way you communicate and treat others, the way you are or are not part of a community. And so tying that in with yoga philosophy asks us to really face some of these hard truths about ourselves. It's why it's not an easy practice. It's why it's hard. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it and this world would be a much better place. But it's why the yoga philosophy aspect of it is so vital, because it makes us really think about nonviolence, truthfulness. It makes us think about not being greedy, not hoarding things. And so I think that's where we could see, if we embrace a little bit more of the yoga philosophy, that's where we could maybe see more improvements within the music industry, what will you? But yeah, it doesn't even matter across musicians, industry people, artists, crew. There's a lot of those kinds of elements that we see. Yeah.
And I'm curious, have you seen if on tour people, teams are starting to implement some yoga practices or health and well-being practices?
Yes, I definitely see it. I think I definitely think that it's starting to be more accepted, because I'm certainly seeing it be discussed in more panels and conferences. I mean, that's, how we connected. And it's something that I've talked on in front of audiences before. I think that there is a certain extent where we still have an acceptance of the hustle culture, of the, burning yourself at, or I'm not really good with idioms, but what is it? Burning your candle at both ends. I think that's still something that is quite normal within the industry, especially if you're touring, you're not getting a lot of sleep. But I believe that if we could set some, intentional practices in place to try to be more cognizant of those kinds of things across the industry, it would just help out with everyone's mental health, because we really shouldn't be on 5 hours of sleep. We really shouldn't be just, running around and only eating a kind bar because we're at a music festival. So I think in a lot of ways, the music industry kind of encourages, these practices. And I would love to see that change, but I think that the change is happening slowly and hopefully sustainably. I think that is certainly changing. I did just have a conversation with Nicole Blonder, who is an integrative health coach and a music industry veteran, about how we should have conferences that end at 7 p.m. and showcases that end at 7 p.m. Like, how have we not started at like 10 a.m., go until 5 p.m., and then everyone just drink a lot of water and go to your hotel rooms or your Airbnbs? So I think the change is going to have to start with us incrementally, but I do feel hopeful and optimistic that it's becoming more prevalent.
Yes, totally. And yeah, conferences like I heard the Jump conference in LA. Were you there?
Oh, Jump Global.
Jump
Yeah, that's
Global?
Nick. Yeah. Jump Global. I wasn't there, but yeah, Jump No Global. They had an event last September, and they're really, really big about. Shout out to Jump Global's team. They're really big about, ensuring that we're human first when we come to these events, when we present ourselves forward in the industry. Yeah, I really love what that team is doing.
Yes, I also think that there's room for more focus on the well-being and the mental health. And talking about that, so like for the past years now we see there's more conversations about mental health and well-being, workshops in the industry events, podcasts where we talk about mental health. That's more often. Uh, is that enough awareness? Or can we do more? What can we do more?
Yeah, I think that awareness is always a really great start. But the hardest thing for people to do is actually commit to things and actually do it in practice. Things are easier said than actually done. Um, so I think it would just be a matter of taking that next step and actually trying to implement things. But I think beyond awareness, it also comes down to community. I'm a big believer in community and surrounding yourself with, the best people that you can find, people who are better than you, and leaning on your community, having conversations like this, right? I think that awareness is great, but then connecting with a community, even if it's a small group of people, to talk about how we can implement these things. And so, in conversation here, we're asking ourselves, how can we implement this? Okay, well, let's break it down with some of the yoga philosophy. Let's talk about ego and see where that conversation leads. If we talk about ego, what are some forms of ego that we've witnessed? Do we generally think that ego is a good thing or a bad thing? I would actually love to hear from the group of what your perspective of ego is, and if you feel, yeah, like what are your general thoughts about ego or the idea of ego within the industry?
I feel like my take on ego has changed like over the years because I do think having some sort of like internal ego can help you with like success and like believing in yourself. But it can like vary person to person. And there's also a spectrum, like is it too much or is it like not enough?
Yeah, I love that, Mila. Any other comments? Mike says it's important to have a healthy ego in the industry, but it can be very dangerous if it gets unhealthy with your relationships. Yes. So both Mike and Mila said something very similar in terms of having that ego and where that is on that spectrum. And so let's actually talk about it from a yoga perspective. So ego, we have a healthy ego and we have an unhealthy ego. The healthy ego is what can really motivate us. It's kind of like the Delulu era, right? Of like, you can do it, you can girl boss, you can do X, Y, and Z. That's a great ego to tap into. Or if a friend needs support and it's like, girl, you got this. Like you can do this. You got this. You're going to accomplish this. You are capable, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's such a great element to the idea of ego. And then we have the other side of the spectrum where it can be quite unhealthy, where we let it lead our hearts as opposed to leading with intention. And what I mean by that is I want to talk about examples. So, in my line of work, it is very easy to get hot-headed. It is very easy to get riled up when you're interacting with other people. And so I will oftentimes question if I am responding to an email from a place of ego. And when I'm questioning that, is the way I'm responding helping the situation? Or is it actually because I feel a certain way and, I feel I want to convey this message, or I want people to know that I'm right or that I'm experienced, as opposed to, hey, maybe that person had a really good idea why am I getting defensive about that idea? Why am I being unresponsive or unwilling to hear what they have to say? So I guess that's kind of a vague example, but I feel like we all have those kinds of experiences that are very similar in terms of, I'm going to respond to this person and just like write this email. And instead of really sitting back and thinking, okay, let's actually think about what they're saying. Let's actually put our ego aside and be curious about what they have to say. So in those instances, I like to talk about curiosity instead of ego. If we can work in an environment where we are trying to approach everything with a sense of curiosity as opposed to taking things personally, because that is a huge blow to the ego. Or, when we're not able to communicate because we're upset about something, that's your ego making you unwilling to put that ego aside and have direct conversations and respectful conversations with other people and your team. So I'm really lucky because I have my other business partner, Leslie Montez. She's someone that I work very closely with. We're constantly talking about our egos. I'm constantly using her as a sounding board of like, hey, did I come at that? Like, did it seem like I came at that from a place of ego, from taking something personally? Or do I need to check myself? And I think that's the part that's really hard to do, is checking yourself, because our ego tells us, don't check yourself, you are right. Whereas what we really need to be able to do is, take a breather and accept that, like, man, my ego got the best of me. And first being able to admit that. And that is so hard. That is so hard to admit when your ego got the best of you. But I promise, if you can admit that ego got the best of you, you're going to feel a million times better after the fact. So it's always worth being able to admit, our ego got the best of us. And I feel like we see ego a lot within this industry. It literally is what makes this industry running, because it runs off of people's egos. Yeah, so I think just that, yes, I kind of went in circles. I hope that all made a lot of sense. I actually forgot the original question because I just started talking about ego. Hey, isn't that interesting? How curious, like, yeah. Oh, Izzy, I don't know if I can hear you. Oh, your mic might have died. Okay. Well, I actually have a question. Would anyone be willing to share an experience where your ego got the best of you and you had to kind of admit that and rectify it?
I feel like I have it. It comes up in like, I can't think of a specific example, but I've started to notice like little moments. So I watched that thing on Netflix called The Greatest Night in Pop or something. And I thought this was so cool. They had this sign on the door that said, check your ego at the door. So I put that up on my door.
Oh, I
And
love that.
since I've had that sign, I've started to notice it more in like little things, even just like talking with my parents. Um, right?
Yes.
And yeah, so I do find it comes up in like on a smaller scale even, but now that I have that sign up, I notice it more, which I think is cool. But so yeah, even just thinking about that, like in all these little circumstances, I do start to check it more. And yeah, I feel better when I check it. I'm like, oh, that actually feels nicer than the other way.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Emma. I completely agree. It's those little moments that I think add up and they start to snowball into something that's much bigger and it becomes an easier practice. But it's always that initial instance. And I love the idea that you have a sign, because you literally have something in your face. So if you're neurodivergent and you need like a reminder, put something on your door to be like, check your ego. I love that. Yeah. My neurodivergent brain requires my business partner Leslie Montez to check my ego. We do it for each other. She has ADHD, I have autism, so like we do it back and forth.
Well.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to share? I love, real quick, Mike wrote, my ego is always in check. That is, that's really, really funny. That's a good joke. It's a good joke. So Kaylee wrote, for me, going to a school with a bunch of musicians and playing in the same area with those musicians, it was really important for me to check my ego, because your friends' achievements should be celebrated as much as your own, and your own achievements should be celebrated the same way. Yes, Kaylee, I love that. There's not a bigger check of your ego than when you find yourself in a position to decide to root for your friends or not. That is such an ego check. And especially as a musician, there's that competitive nature, but then you're in an ensemble, but then you want to be first chair, but you're best friends with the first chair person. And so there's this whole dynamic that we're constantly exploring as musicians of like, how can I be friends and be peers with this person and be an ally to this person, but then they're also my competition. That's personally what I hated about being in band and in orchestra, because I was like, I just want to be friends with everyone. I don't want to compete. But yeah, I love that comment. Thank you. Any other examples?
I actually, to add on to that, something that I just remembered this example. One way that I've been trying to check my ego is I've had friends, what it's some in the music industry, some film and TV or whatever, but entertainment industry. But it is that thing of like when someone has or like has a little success, and like being happy for them and like actually being happy for them. A way I've been checking, I'm like, I feel like such an asshole if I don't, but like I recently, a friend got a really good job and I did feel really happy for him, and I was like, oh my God. And I think that was my way of checking my ego and being like, okay, like just that actually being happy, because it's really about caring for the person. And yeah, anyway, I've had that other like jealousy bit before, and then I'm like I feel like that's the ego coming in, and it's like, oh, why can't I have that? But more recently I've been like, no, like I'm actually happy to see my friends successful.
Yeah.
Which I feel can be like a hard thing, me like to think about that jealousy piece and that ego. Because I'm like, I don't like being jealous, but we all are sometimes. But I felt like a cool ego check for me, because I actually did feel really happy for him. And I just found it interesting.
Well, let's talk about this, because this is really, really important, because we can all relate where we're jealous, or there's some underlying feeling that we have. When we have those kind of external feelings about other people, about other situations, it really comes from us. There's something within us that is insecure. It actually never has anything to do with that person or what they achieve, and it always has to come down to us and ourselves. And I think that's what we really need to address when we're talking about ego is, all right, I want to be happy for this person, but what is inhibiting me from being happy with that person? What is going on within me? What kind of traumas do I have? What kind of other lingering negative feelings do I have, or experiences that I feel? Oh, is it because, when I was a child, I didn't get the recognition I deserved. And so when I see other people do that, I feel like, oh, they don't deserve it either because I never felt that myself. I mean, of course, that's like a very non-specific example. That's kind of specific. But I think it's really important that when we look at these kinds of things, to remember it actually has nothing to do with that person, that other person that we're jealous of or we're envious of. And it's everything to do with us, because that's where the ego is, right? Our ego is not about other people. It is always internal. And so that's where, for yoga, what's incredible is the mindfulness, the self-awareness, building that connection, learning and growing and understanding who you are more and more, of like, okay, well, am I jealous? I'm jealous of that person because, for whatever reason, I guess the jealousy could stem from, let's say, I'm jealous of that person because we've been at the same time, and all of a sudden I feel like they're ahead of me. well, why do I feel like they're ahead of me? Why is it that I've all of a sudden defined that they are ahead of me? Why is it all of a sudden I've defined that I'm on the same journey as this person when we are two completely different people? And so starting to reel it back in and address some of these things and getting a bit deeper and deeper, which is really difficult to do, I think is really important when we're checking our ego and trying to apply our yoga philosophy into this mindset. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. One last question would be, what are the other practices that you have integrated in your life? And also, do you have morning and evening routines?
Ooh, okay. So I do have routines. I definitely do. I think of it more as a weekly routine. I try to do something exercise related 3 days a week. And then on the other 4 days, it's either restorative / yin yoga, or it's resting and not doing anything except maybe getting some work done. I need that balance in my life. I'm at a point in my life now where I don't have to go to the gym as much because it's literally probably more detrimental to my body. In the mornings, I get up, I like to take my time. I like to take my sweet time. And sometimes I'll just lay in bed and just close my eyes, pretend I'm still sleeping. Sometimes I'll get up and go to the gym. I always try to have a really good protein, healthy uh, breakfast where it might be eggs, it might be toast with peanut butter, oatmeal, a good protein smoothie. And then I like to get through some of my work and go through my to-do lists, my priorities, look to see what my meetings are. My nighttime routine is very much I try to eat dinner before 5 p.m. so I don't have to digest through the night, because that does affect your sleep pattern. I try to go to bed as early as I can. Sometimes I struggle with that personally. But before I go to bed, I always journal and I always try to read something. Journaling is a way for me to mind dump right before I go to bed, because I tend to ruminate. That's the kind of personality I have, and I have to really let go. So if we want to get deeper into yoga philosophy, aparigraha, which is letting go of things, that is a practice that I'm currently working on and reflecting on a lot of. And then reading, I try to do something that's more educational, that's outside of the music industry. So right now I'm reading The Body Keeps Score, which is about trauma. Um, yes, it's a bit tough of a book, especially if you have specific traumas. I wouldn't actually recommend this book for certain individuals. If you really want to know what I think about it, shoot me an email and I can let you know my actual genuine thoughts. But I'm getting through that book right now. But on like a weekly basis, I also try to map out my day to day and just put in some time for myself. Yeah, so other things that I like to do, I do pole fitness. I love pole fitness. Felt that it's been a way to express my body and move in a way that's much different than in yoga. And also it really taps into femininity in a lot of ways as well. Not that it's only for, women, but certainly men can do it as well. But there's like a gracefulness to it that I love. I also do indoor skydiving. I'm a licensed skydiver, and right now I fly in this indoor skydiving tunnel, and that's another way that I can express myself creatively with my body and just fly and do all sorts of really cool things. But it all comes back to yoga, because I apply my knowledge of yoga in the physical aspects of these other practices so that I can maintain healthy joints, healthy muscles, and good breath work, because breathing is important. You can't hold your breath while you're moving and exercising. So yeah, that's what I like to do.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. And I saw your videos of the pole fitness. That's wow, it's so beautiful. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Would you like to share a practice?
Yes, I would. Before I dive into this practice, I wanted to ask, does anyone have any questions? Any other comments about, I know we yoga philosophy is such a big, big, big topic, but I'm hoping that we got into a little bit of it. But if there's any other questions beyond that, does anyone have anything they'd like to ask? No is also a perfectly acceptable answer. No? All right. Well, I would love to then end this class with a little bit of movement. I don't know if everyone is seated, but perhaps we can all find ourselves in a seated position. We're going to do a little bit of movement, and then I want to end with some diaphragmatic breathing. So you are welcome to close your eyes. If you would prefer to turn off your cameras as well, you're more than welcome to. I'll keep my camera on. But we'll start in an upright seated position. I want you to find a way to elongate the spine upwards, sit up nice and tall. Think about relaxing the shoulders away from the ears. You can rest the palms of your hands on your thighs or your knees. If you'd like to flip the palms towards the sky, that is more of an invitation for energy. Perhaps you feel that you could use more of the universe's energy, and so you flip your palms towards the sky. If you feel that you need to protect your energy, then you would flip your palms down so it lays on your thighs or your knees. So let's take a few moments here. You can close the eyes or soften your gaze and start to notice the breath. Notice the depth of your breath, the temperature of the air. Notice the muscles of your face and see if you can relax them. Unclench the jaw. Notice any slight, minute movements of the body, the torso, side to side, front and back, just noticing those micro movements. And continue to breathe. For the next few moments, few minutes, do your best to stay present. And if the mind wanders, if there are distractions, thoughts, noises that pull you out of this present moment, just know that that is perfectly okay. There is no perfect yoga practice. There's no perfect meditation. It is why we call it a practice. Begin to deepen the breath, lengthening your inhales and your exhales to the best of your ability. Notice the quality of your breath. Notice the quality of your mind. Then we'll begin to move. If the eyes are closed, you'll slowly open the eyes. Inhale. And as you exhale, drop the chin to the chest. Continue sitting up nice and tall, shoulders away from the ears. And then we'll start to roll the chin over to the right shoulder. And then gently turn the chin over to the left shoulder. It's like we're shaking our head towards the earth. And then you'll lift the chin to neutral and continue turning your head side to side. Move as slow as you'd like. Then we'll pause with the head towards the right shoulder. Drop the chin towards that shoulder. And I want you to extend the opposite hand out. You can use the right hand to help increase the stretch by gently pulling the head down towards the armpit area. And you should feel a stretch along the left side of the neck. Now, in this orientation, you might notice that it is affecting the quality of your breath. So you'll do your best to breathe in and out. Continue making full breaths as best as you can. And then let's go ahead and switch sides. So now The chin is towards the left shoulder, hand on the head. The right arm reaches outward. And you should feel a stretch along the right side of the neck. Continue breathing. Take a deep inhale. And as you exhale, we'll release the hands down, return the head to neutral. And checking that we have room on either sides of us, we will sweep our arms up by our ears. So just check that there's room. When you're ready, arms alongside the body. Inhale, sweep the arms up by the ears. And as you exhale, palms together down to heart center. We'll do that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. Then place one hand over the navel, the other hand can relax. And we'll start to bring our attention to the belly, just the abdomen. As you inhale, feel the abdomen balloon and expand, the hand along the navel pressing away from the spine. And as you exhale, feel a slight contraction of the core. You'll feel the hand over the navel come closer to the spine. Inhale, expanding the belly. Exhale, contracting the belly. Continue doing this by expanding your inhales, lengthening them, and lengthening your exhales. But really think about that expansion of the belly. Maybe the next breath cycle, you'll really broaden across the abdominal muscles, the lower back muscles. And as you exhale, let the air go. That slight contraction at the end of your exhale. See if you can deepen that contraction a little bit more. Then you'll relax the hand down and return to your normal breath. Keep the face relaxed. And just notice any changes within the body. I thank you all so very much for the time, for the conversations, and for this short practice. You've all been so wonderful. Namaste. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was wonderful. I feel like so relaxed.
Good. I'm so glad. Thank you all so much. Yes, thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Cool. I really appreciate it, Izzy. Thank you for giving me the space to do this.
And thank you for joining.
Yeah.
And,
if anyone wants to connect, please find me on Instagram. I'll drop my email in the chat too. So any questions, please let me know. Check out my podcast. Yes.
and I will send a follow-up email with the recording. And I will also send you all the links to Melissa's podcast and her collective entertainment also, and also some information about what I do. And thank you very much, everybody.